record on this computer. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Pushing the Limits. Today, I'm super excited. I have an amazing guest for you. I really do find the most incredible people, and this lady is a superwoman. So welcome to the show. It's really nice to have you, Laura. Laura Penhaul is sitting in Cornwall in England. Laura, how's your day going? Or your night going?
I was going to say, it's been great, but it's now 8 o'clock in the evening. So, it's all good. It's been a beautiful sunny day. So,
Lovely. And so Laura is an amazing person who does expeditions and is a physio. Laura, can you give us a little bit of background? Because I want you to tell your story in your words. Give us a bit of a synopsis about what you do and what the incredible things. I mean, I'm done a bit in the intro, so but I really want your words, if you like.
Yeah, no problems. Well, firstly, thanks, Lisa, for having me on the show. It's an honor because I think you're a superwoman more than me.
Hell no.
But but no, I mean, my background is I worked in elite sport, in Olympic and Paralympic sport for over 14 years. Sort of went to Vancouver, London, Rio, Tokyo cycles.
Wow.
And during that kind of journey, and that was as lead physio in different sports, whether that was downhill skiing, whether it was with British athletics Paralympic team, and more recently it was with the British sailing team. And during that sort of journey as a physio, like the role that we have as physios, physical therapists, are very much kind of, you're seeing somebody through a journey. And like when I worked with patients in trauma, versus kind of, in spinal cord injuries, and then through to Paralympic sport, I've been surrounded by people that have like been faced with significant adversity. And it's always along my journey of my career have I been fascinated by understanding the person in front of me and kind of going, there's usually two types of people when they've been thrown a massive curveball, like an RTA, a road traffic accident, or something horrendous that is completely changed their life for the rest of their life. Those two, there's people that can go through the same type of thing, and yet one person wakes up being so thankful that they're alive, they're now going to make the most of life. And then somebody else that wakes up and they're like, they wish they didn't wake up. And as a physio dealing with those two people, you've got to have a very different approach. And in the kind of, to me, understanding that person that wants to give up and actually being able to change their mindset and facilitate, go shoulder to shoulder with them, is really powerful.
Wow.
And then those people that do wake up and want to thrive, like they're the ones that have inspired me to do more stuff. Because I'm like, why do we wait for adversity? Why do we wait for something to be a curveball before we then like start to go, oh my God, I need to make the most of life. Like I'm fit and I'm healthy. I need to make the most of life because clearly stuff could happen in an hour's time. Like, exactly. So that's kind of what then drove me to start to do more and more personally in kind of a bit of exploratory expedition space. And then so that led me to row the Pacific Ocean, which is kind of, what we're talking about.
You say that again. You just rode the Pacific Ocean. I just dropped that as a two. Yeah, and then I rode the Pacific Ocean. So you were into sailing and into rowing and into all of that sport. Prior, this was your thing?
Well, that's the thing. No, I wasn't, in all honesty. I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Like I love any athletes, anybody that I work with. I want to understand them and I want to understand the sport, the environment that they're in. So when I was working with skiers, I went off and did a ski season and learned to ski. Wow. I'm somebody that loves to do different sports and outdoorsy environments. And if I was working with marathon runners, I was like, I can't fully treat them if I don't understand, if I haven't run a marathon. Like to me, I need to experience what they've experienced, even in a small way, to kind of get a glimpse of the environment. So I would run a marathon, same with triathletes, and not to the extent of yours. So did a half Ironman, and then the point with the Paralympic cohort, when I was working with them, I was like, this is an area that I can't untap. I can do athletics, but I can't understand what it is to be a Paralympian. However, how can I put myself in a situation which is completely unknown, that's kind of going to make me want to give up, and I want to understand what it is we draw on when we can't give up. We've only got one option. So that's what I was searching for a couple of years. I was searching for something that was going to be out of my comfort zone completely, and was going to be a challenge on multiple levels.
Sure,
And
must have
so,
been.
yeah, exactly. And I guess at the time I was doing sort of triathlons and was enjoying them. But anything that was cycling, running, swimming, I felt like, this would be expected, and I kind of would already be a bit familiar with it. So when I suddenly heard about ocean rowing, I was like, oh my God, this is ideal. I've always wanted to row, but never did it. Then never got a chance to. So I'd never rowed before. I've never like lost sight of shore. Like, I've never been out at sea properly, never sailed or any of that
Wow.
stuff. Well, bar like going on a few trips, but yeah,
Yep.
I'm not a sailor by any shape or form. So and it just connected, when an opportunity comes up and you're like, this is exactly what I've been looking for. And it was a proper light bulb moment. And the thing for me, and it's the one time in my whole life that I have been so focused, like,
Yep.
I have to make this happen, because I know in my heart of hearts, I know what I'm going to get out of this is going to be huge.
Wow.
And that basically is my starting point with it. It was kind of, I didn't know how to row. I went from being a marathon weight of like something stupid like 58 kilos up to, I had to go up to 72 kilos to
Wow.
put on mass. I had to
Yep.
be
Yep.
big and
Yep.
not skinny, because we were going
Yeah.
to lose a load of weight out there. I had to put a team together, whereas in my personal sport I was doing quite individual sports. So, I had to work out the team cohesion, the whole
Wow.
team dynamics and recruitment. I had to figure out what the boat was, get it built, like then set up this as a business. I thought it
Oh
was
my
all about the
God.
physical. So yeah, so the whole journey, it was, I mean, now on reflection, there's so many learnings from it that
Yeah.
I've absolutely thrived from. But the self-awareness piece, how much I've learned about myself and the different perspectives, and approaching that row, my approach was very much like, this is all brand spanking new. So
Yep.
if I can approach it with a blank canvas, if I can have a real adaptive mindset, and if I've now gone on the other side of the table, rather than surrounding athletes, if I surround myself with the relevant expertise, actually, how far can I get, and how far can I really experience that athlete?
Yeah, sorry, my brother's just come in the middle of the podcast. It's all right. He's just banging on the door.
Sorry.
Come in, Mitch. Go around the other side. Sorry. Yeah, this is podcast life for you. When you didn't tell your brother you're recording. Okay, there was so much there that I want to unpack, because there was like, you just skipped over a ton of stuff. Number one, you had no idea. So what gave you the confidence, what was the little voice inside you saying, I can do this, when you're in a completely unknown sport? Like, what was it that made you think, oh yeah, I can row across the Pacific for 9 months, and that'll all work out well? How did you even come up with the concept for something so audacious?
Well, I mean, it's all about small pieces, isn't it? And kind of reaching out to those that have done stuff, and those that you respect and have the expertise. So it was basically breaking the journey down. First of all, one, is that route even possible? So initially somebody had asked me to be part of the Indian Ocean, and they were putting a team together. And then I evolved it into the Pacific. And then I was like, well, actually, originally it might have been the New Ocean Wave Race, which just goes from San Fran to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's not the Pacific, that's a third of it. Like, so if I'm going to say I'm going to row the Pacific, I want to can I row all of it?
Yeah.
So it was then reaching out to somebody from a logistical point of view and a support structure point of view, saying, is this even feasible, and what would it look like? And when they said yes, I was like, right, okay, so that's route can get involved. This is what it's going to look like. We're going to need to stop. We're going to need to replenish, but it's doable. But it's going to take this time frame. And then it was kind of like, right, in order for me to get prepped and the team to get prepped, what's the time frame that it's going to take to do that? And let's be realistic. And I wasn't realistic. I was completely naive. I thought it would only take us about a year to get to the start line. And
Wow.
hell no, it took 4 years to get to start line.
Holy heck, 4 years.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's massive.
Yeah, so it was but interestingly there's so many parallels, you know, like working in Olympic sport, everything's in 4-year cycles for
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Olympic cycle. And so there's so much that I learned through that process. If I thought I was only going to go in a year's time, that didn't happen. We didn't have the funding. I didn't quite have
No.
the team. The boat wasn't finished, you know, and it was like, right, I need to go again. I need to reset. I need
Yep.
to sort of keep the ball rolling, but I need to learn from what failures I've had here and how
Yep.
do I overcome them.
Wow.
The second year didn't quite
Persistence.
happen when I thought it was, but it's all that sort of stuff. You go, yeah, you can give up, but I had such a clear vision with it, and the question in my head was, there's going to be an all-female team that are going to do this at some point.
Yep.
Like, why can't it be me? And I'm sure that will happen in my lifetime. So what am I missing? What are the things that I can't see that are in my blind spots? And that's where I started to reach out to pull in different people to say, right, this is the problem I've got. How can you help me? How can you see? And it was that reaching out for help with the right expertise that got us to the start line. It wasn't me. It was the collective, bigger support team around us, for sure.
How did you even like the resources and the money and the financial and the sponsorship when you didn't have a back? I mean, you had a backstory as a high performance expert and helping other people and training and so on, but you know, like you didn't have you weren't surrounded on fines with a huge bloody amount of resources behind you. How did you? And I know what I had to go through to get to the races that I did, and that was probably a heck of a lot less than what you had to go through. How did you face that, and what did you learn on the business side of the journey, the marketing and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
Selling the
right
idea
on the
to
money.
people.
It kind of, it's exactly that I think it's showing the belief, like the absolute dogged determinedness that this is going to happen. And you know, and I put in my own sweat equity into, you know, I paid for the boat to be built in the first place, so I'm like, I'm gonna do this. Like, do you want to be part of it or
You want to
not?
be
Because
up with something
we're going to
epic.
do this regardless. Yeah, so it
That's
was,
basically
and don't
how I
get me
did
wrong,
it
that was
too.
not my approach. Yeah, but you know what, I mean, I say that, but let's face it, I was useless at kind of asking for money, like in all, you know, I was great at doing it for our charities, but to ask to support me and like our journey, I was crap. You know, I'm a physio, I like to help people, I don't like asking for help. You know, at the time I was very much in that poor sort of leadership style, and that was a big learning point. But then reaching out to people that do work in business and do work in sponsorship, and they were the people that then helped me to shape sort of, you know, a sponsorship deck and how you need to brand it, what's your, you know, the colors, the language, all of that type of stuff. It's suddenly, and I loved it because I mean, I love learning. So suddenly I was entering a snippet of a different world that I knew nothing about previously. Same with like the PR side of it, had no idea, but that was great fun. And the business model itself, like, yeah, it became a business. And I thought it was all about the physical, and that was totally not. It was 10% of like the project, if that. And then so like you say, setting up a business I had no Scooby-Doo about. And so simplicity was reaching out to people that had been successful, had done it before, and the likes of, you know, Mark Beaumont that we've talked about before. Like Mark is somebody that's an elite athlete, expedition athlete. He'd actually at the time rowed the Atlantic, and unfortunately they nearly died actually. So I'd reached out to him to learn from his experiences, from the actual failures more. I don't want necessarily the successes, but and he then was great at providing me with a bit more of the structure of, well, you know, the timeline, the budget, the this, that and the other, and how you sort of need to get the sponsorship.
Amazing.
And so I think to me it's about, as you know, if this is a new space and you hold an ego thinking you're gonna, then you're never gonna get anywhere.
Get your ass kicked.
Basically, whereas for me, I don't mind saying I don't know something. I'm happy to ask why and how and who can help.
You're very humble. You can tell that in 5 minutes of talking to you, you know.
Oh, bless you.
And
Thank you very much.
and how did you get a team together? Because you get 4 ladies, you rowed the Pacific, and people, we're talking like 9 months in a rowboat unsupported, like from California to Cairns. It wasn't it? That's correct.
Yeah.
There's a documentary out on it. If people want to find it, we'll work out where the links are and how they can get hold of it, perhaps afterwards. 4 ladies in a rowboat rowing across the Atlantic. I mean, to the average person who doesn't know anything about rowing, it sounds absolutely insane. And like I said to my husband, I was interviewing this morning, and I said, I couldn't last 24 hours in a rowboat. I probably couldn't last 4 hours in a rowboat. How do you comprehend 9 months? Like that for me is, I mean, I've never done anything on that scale of that long, like the longest thing I ever did was run through New Zealand, which was a sustained effort over, say, 42 days. And that would nearly bloody killed me, but that's not 9 months, let alone all the logistics of it. Wow.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, flipping heck, 40 odd days that you're running the length of New Zealand, like that's insane. So you gotta,
it's a hell of a lot easier than rowing.
It's not though. I mean, it's all about perspective, isn't it? And it's all about the context that you're in. And this is the thing that I get really passionate about is I want to optimize people's own elite performance, like not comparative to anybody else. Like what your elite is, your achievement of like 42 days and everything else you've achieved is huge. Whereas somebody else's 42 days of running will be running a marathon. Like that will be, it's about that gap analysis, sort of where you'd got yourself to then be able to take on the 42-day sort of challenge. Like that was a big old leap, but you were already like sort of your experiences and you'd prepped yourself for that
years and years.
Just like if some, and whereas somebody, who's on a couch, but then is setting their sights on running a marathon, that's their 42 days. Like that's their elite performance for them. And the row for us, it was a big old leap, but it was fundamentally, it was broken down. Like I think sometimes you must have found this with the run you're talking about there and everything else. You've got to break it down. Like you've certainly in the preparation phase, you've got to plan every inch and every sort of crook of it to within its life, so that you don't leave any stone left unturned. You feel like you're best prepared. That gives you confidence to then have capacity to deal with the unknown when you're faced with it. So to me, that sort of, I always wanted to leave like at least 30% of capacity in my headspace to make sure I can react when I need to, exactly, and deal with the unknown. Wow. If we'd gone on that row in that first year, Jesus Christ, like most of it was unknown. Like that, I was so naive, it was ridiculous. But by the time, it was 4 years down the line, I felt so confident in, actually, we've trialed the boat, we've done 72 hours, we've done a couple of weeks, we've done team testing, we've done routines, we've done sleep depot, we've done the training, we've done the psych support, all of those, every aspect of it. I feel like we took out. And then it was a case of, right, well then we just need to do this on a day in, day out, and then however long that's going to last for, it's just sticking to routines, which you would know the same in whatever you do.
The more it becomes normal.
Exactly. And then it's kind of like, well, actually, once you lose sight of shore, whether you're out there for 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, actually doesn't make much difference. You're
in the shit anyway if anything goes wrong. You're too far from help anyway. You've lost sight of shore.
You kind of just got to crack on, and there's no going back. You can't row backwards. Sort of, it's only about having the confidence to step into taking on and for us, yes, we rode the Pacific literally, but to me it was the essence of everybody's got their own Pacifics to cross. Like it's about, our film's called Losing Sight of Shore because it's about having the courage to lose sight of shore, like have that sort of courage to just step away from the comfort, step away from the knowns, and like, oh my God, that's where life just opens up and you're exposed.
Because I had Paul Taylor, who's a neuroscientist and ex-British Army Navy guy, and exercise physiologist on the show last week, and he's talking about the small bubble you can live in, or the big bubble. And the big bubble is where we all want to be, where we're reaching our potential and we're fulfilling and we're all these amazing things that we could do, and we know that bubble is there. but we're all scared living in this little comfort zone. And how do you push outside? Because that outside is risk of failure, in your case, risk of dying. There's so much that you put on the line physically, mentally, financially, emotionally, relationships, you name it, you put it on the line for this one thing. And that is living in that big bubble and scaring the crap out of yourself and doing it anyway. Most people have this tendency to want to be comfortable. And I see this as a massive problem in our society today, is that we're all cozy and comfortable and sitting on the couch watching Netflix, and we're warm, and we don't push ourselves physically, and we don't push ourselves. And this leads to disaster when it comes to resilience and being able to cope, because you've been through this amazing adventure and expedition, and you've risked everything. You must have an inner confidence that is just and I know that you won't have it in all areas of life, because this is certain specific, and I know how that works, because I'm really good in some things and really crap in others, and I'm still working on my mindset in this area and that area, or whatever. We're work in progress. But when you've lifted up your horizons to that big, nothing must daunt you in a way. Like, you must be like, okay, whatever's coming at me, I can probably handle it, because inside you have that resilience, which is so important.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're right. It's about context, isn't it? Like, I'm a risk taker, but I'm a really calculated risk taker, sort of. So people, exactly. So kind of the Pacific seems like it's like ridiculous and it's life-threatening. I mean, I didn't leave any stone left unturned. I had like military guys helping us to make sure we'd sort of not left stuff unturned. We went through survival practice. Awesome. There was everything, and the amount of sort of routines we had on the boat, that leashes and kind of safety equipment, was next to none, because I was like, the risk we've got is getting separated from the boat. So I'm risk aware, really risk aware, and kind of, and make sure that sort of I don't leave any stone unturned. So then I feel confident to go forwards. I wouldn't just leap into it blindly, if that makes sense. Exactly.
You will die.
But I mean, it's no different to if you watch, I don't think, you watch Alex Honnold climbing free solo, the El Cap sort of climb, if anybody's seen that film. I mean, it's phenomenal, and anybody would, you watch it and you're like, oh my God, that's insane. He's free climbing that. Like, what if he just slips? What if this? What if that?
One hand.
But look at his meticulous approach to it. Exactly. But then his meticulous approach, he hasn't just woken up that day and gone, right, sod it, I'm going to climb up, sort of free solo this thing. He's been off top roping with it. He's kind of lead climbed it. He's kind of known every single hold and place. He's written it, he's drawn it, he's visualizing it. And he's only done it when he feels completely ready, prepped, and that actually there's no move in that is going to be a risk. So therefore, he's a calculated risk taker, and it is extreme when you watch it, but the preparedness is totally there.
I could have definitely learned from you. I tend to jump into shit and then go, oh, I didn't put the parachute on as I'm halfway down. Although, you do learn from that. I remember going out into a race in Niger, which was 333 Ks across one of the most dangerous landscapes and, places on earth, countries on earth. And we were meant to have food come from France, and it didn't arrive. And I wasn't prepared. I didn't have my own stash. My husband at the time, my ex-husband now, he did. And when you're doing things like that and you end up with food poisoning and you're, vomiting and shitting your way across the Sahara, and you realize, you could have avoided that. That's sort of a big lesson. And do your preparation better, Don't be so cavalier with I'm going to go and, run 100 miles and I haven't even trained for a marathon yet. No. And I had to learn those things the hard way, because I had a tendency just to dive in and this is all exciting and let's do it, And then,
but then you learn though, don't you?
Yeah, but it's not a good way to learn in the middle of the Sahara. It's better to learn previously.
Yeah, that is for sure. But yeah, I mean, you learn, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaways of whenever we talk about failure and stuff. It's not a failure
Nah,
unless you don't learn from it. Like,
you know, that's it.
and leaping sometimes is exactly what you need to do, and it's just not being scared to fall. Like, just knowing that, you know what, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but it's got you one step further and one step closer to finding what the
Yeah.
next thing might be. So yeah, just it's having that, like you say, the sort of the robustness, the resilience, or whatever it is, to bounce back, to kind of jump back up, to ask the questions, well, why didn't that work, and let's try it a different way,
Wow.
or learn from it and do
And
something
you
different.
like you said, you reached out to Mark, and he'd had, nearly died and had actually failed in that particular expedition, done lots of other crazy stuff, but in
Yeah,
that one, and it is those things, like, you are risking failure, and you have to understand that from the outset, that you can take care of all the things, you can prepare, you can get everything, and you're still risking, because if this was easy, everyone would be doing it. And you have to be okay with the and this is something I try and get my athletes to understand. When you're actually done the work, you've done the build up, you've done all the hard stuff that you knew, now standing at the start line, that's actually time to celebrate and go, I've done the hard work. Now it's up to whatever's going to come my way. And like you
that's
say,
it.
being able to adapt and
Yeah,
to have the flexibility to take whatever's coming at you, which isn't always easy, but you have to sort of give up those, I think, the consequences of what if, because
mm,
if you constantly are asking yourself, well, what if I don't make that time? Say you're running a marathon. Oh, I want to do it in under 3.5 hours, or whatever the case may be. And then you're so like, oh, no, no. And it takes you 3 hours 32, and you go, I'm a failure. Like, hang on a minute. No, hang on. That's not how it works.
yeah, yeah,
you,
exactly.
you've got to understand that there are things you can't control. So you've done
Yeah,
everything you can control, and now the rest is up to the gods, basically, and you're going to have
yeah,
to be able to be adaptable and flexible. And that was one of the things on your your website, talking about being adaptive in your performance. And I think that's a really good thing, because we cannot control, like, you can be having a bad day at the office, and you get up and you feel sick, and your immune system's down, and you've got your period, and whatever the case may be.
yeah,
And you weren't bargaining with that, so you have to be able to, well, I need to still go because there's no way back.
yeah.
How do I deal with it?
Yeah, and I think it's a really valid point, because I mean, even in the row halfway through, and it's in the films, it's not kind of confidential stuff. One of the girls, like, she just completely changed her personality, right? Because that was exactly the problem. She thought she could control the boat.
Yeah.
She thought, she was the rower. Out of all of us, she was somebody that actually had rowed since she was a kid and stuff. And
Wow.
she thought ocean rowing was, you
Yep.
know, she didn't want to lose the passion, unfortunately. Yeah, it killed her passion. She
Yep.
didn't know then. She lost her sense of identity, all of that stuff.
Oh
But
yeah,
because
real
she was
tough.
trying, yeah, awful. But because she was trying to control the boat, like, but the current, the wind was against us.
Yep.
Like, those are things you cannot control.
Yep.
Control. It's a 1-ton boat. Not one person is going to be able to
Yep.
control moving that in the direction you want it to go in. And so, but it was the collective of the team that enabled us to be able to rally round and understand, first of all, recognize her change in personality was
Due
it
to
was a
that.
behavior. It was, yeah, there was something underlying. It was not her, what it was, but there was something emotional that she couldn't verbalize straight
Yep.
away, so hence she just changed her personality type.
Wow.
And then it was like the strength of the team to be able to rally together to sort of support that, to kind of come at it from the right approach, that she was then able to share it, to then collectively go, we just need to see a different perspective on this stuff. And I think that's where, a vast dynamic sort of team, a diverse team, sorry, is what I meant, has got so much strength in it, because when you see it through your own lens, there's only sort of one way. Whereas if you've got some diversity there, that just brings a different perspective, and suddenly you're able to see, you can't control the control, you can only control the controllables, you can't control what's out of our
Mm.
control, and those things are the weather. That is,
Yep.
yes, will prevent being ill or injured, but that
Yep.
might well happen. That's,
Yeah.
is what it
And it
is.
does.
if
Mm.
and if the boat sort of fails, whatever, then those are only three things that are going to be out of our control. And if anything happened there, then I wouldn't be I wouldn't have been upset. I would be upset, but I wouldn't be throwing my toys out the pram, because it isn't something we could control. And it would, if the row didn't happen, we didn't finish, because one of those three things, that is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is, and you've done your utmost. And I mean, I've failed
Yeah.
on different
Oh,
expeditions and
yeah.
things that I've done, like really fallen on my face, with documentary crews there to capture it all on film, as you just
Yeah.
absolutely completely
Love it.
face planted, and and it takes a long time to get up again, and it knocks the crap out of you, and but it's part of that. Okay, well, this is the game we're in. We're pushing the limits, and sometimes you are human, and you don't have the
Yeah.
resources. One of the things that I find really, really I'd love to, and I think this probably needs its own bloody podcast, is the whole team dynamic thing. I mean, it's one thing to be a solo athlete that does things, but the couple of times when I've had to be in a team situation, I find it really, really tough, because you're reliant. I did one in the Himalayas, and we're trying to do the world's highest marathon ever done. And I was with a guy who was a mountaineer and used to altitude and very at home in that space. And I wasn't. And I'd done a couple of things at altitude and sort of survived by the skin of my teeth. I'm an asthmatic. I don't really do well in the mountains. So take on world's highest
A
marathon.
marathon.
Good
Yeah.
idea. And it went pear-shaped. And I got sick. I got altitude sickness, and I couldn't even start. My body was, I couldn't even tie my shoelaces. But the worst thing was that he changed. And the person that he was down here was not the person that he was up there, and it ended up being quite nasty and quite detrimental. And he's not here to defend himself, so I'm not going to say anything too much. But it wasn't a nice situation to be in. I did not trust that if I was in the shit out there, that we would work together as a team to get through it. I felt like, no, he wouldn't do that. So now I'm like very, very always aware if I'm teaming up with people. Like we've got at the moment this weekend in my hometown, the Oxfam 100. It's a 100-kilometer event where lots of just normal everyday people are doing 100 Ks, which is like amazing walking, and they're doing it in teams of 4. And the stuff they're going to go through, and there'll be people that are, expeditions bring out the worst and bring out the best in people. And you don't know until you're in the situation with them as which way are they going to go and which way are you going to go. I mean, I've been a really horrible person on some of my, with my crew on different occasions where I've just lost my shit, because I'm in so much pain, sleep deprivation, emotions are all up the wazoo, and you just, you're snappy, irritable, just horrible afterwards, and having to go and say, I'm very sorry, So how did you deal with that over 9 months? Like that's on steroids, like the dynamic for women. Everybody's having highs and lows at different points in there. How did you cope with that? I mean, you've mentioned the one person and how you helped pull together. It takes incredible leadership to keep a team like that together for 9 months, no matter how wonderful you all are.
I mean, don't get me wrong, you still have arguments and stuff, but it was all in the preparation, and we knew, I mean, it's a 29-foot ocean rowing boat, right? So it's kind of the size of Greg Rutherford is got the world record for the long jump, right? So it's kind of his long jump is the size of our boat. So it's a really small space. And then when you're cramped into the cabin, there's 2 of you, and if it's stormy, then all 4 of you are either in that or 2 in each cabin. So it's a tight, confined space. So it was really clear from the outset that this team we had to be cohesive. We had to be really transparent. And something I was particularly pedantic about was I never want to leave a pebble in a shoe. Like if there's an issue, we need to confront it. We have to step forwards into it. We can't, I don't want any bitchiness. Like that's always been sort of my approach to most things. Like I can't stand the whole talking to other people rather than talking to the individual you've got an issue with. you just need to step into that, as much as it might feel uncomfortable. And I guess working in a performance context, we're scrutinized on a daily basis. We're kind of, everybody's asking you why, what are you doing, type stuff. You've got to justify. You feel like you're under a spotlight all the time, so you start to build this kind of separation, like kind of, right, no, they're asking me that because of the person in front of us, or the end goal. That's what it's about. It's got nothing to do with me personally. We're just trying to optimize what we need to do. So when I pulled this, the sort of the team came together, a lot of it, I was like, how do we stress test this? Like, we have to stress test it, because
hell yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that's where I started working with Keith, a performance psychologist. Reached out to him because I was like, there's got to be more depth to this. We need tools. I need to know what I'm going to draw on when I'm wanting to give up, like what's going to be my go-tos. I need to know how I can respond and react to different personalities and stuff, and how they're going to react to each other. So Keith was the absolute rock to the success of our journey, in all honesty. Like, I worked with him for 4 years, and I still work with him, sorry, to this day. And Keith sort of, he enabled us to sort of understand the differences in our personalities, from a basics of just doing psychometrics and stuff, but pretty in-depth ones, and then analyzing that a little bit more and playing it out in different scenarios, and then really forcing us to kind of do the round table. Because, and the girls hated confrontation. They weren't used to giving and receiving feedback. It was always felt like a personal threat. So I just had to put myself in the barrier first. So I'd be like, right, cool, okay, well, if you're not going to give it, and you're going to say everything's rosy when it's not, I'll pull it out. So this is what's not going so well, and this is not going so well. Right, now give it back to me. Hit me, like, because then as soon as I've given it, they're happy to give it back to me, because they think I'm being a bit of a bitch. yeah, exactly. So I'm like, it's fine. And then and I would show them that I was learning from it, like, because I was, and they would call me, I would have Laura number 1, Laura number 2 in my personalities, and I didn't realize that until sort of, going through the row, and they're like, oh my God, it's Laura number 2. And Laura number 2 is somebody that when she starts getting like tired, hungry, all of that gubbins, and sort of just a bit over it, I start getting really assertive. I'm very tunnel vision, and my empathy just goes. Whereas normal time, like, I've got heaps of the empathy until it gets to a point, and then I'm like, nah. yeah. And so they'd be like, all right, Laura number 2. And because we then had a language that was a little bit disconnected to the personal, and it made a bit of fun of it, then you sort of were able to sort of take a pause, hear it and stuff. But we had loads of methodologies that we'd worked on to try and get to that point.
This is fascinating.
And that was sort of to the point with there, though, is that it's not to say we didn't have any arguments, because we did. Like, I mean, Nat and I in particular, completely different personalities. She is like, I mean, she's a beautiful character. She is Miss Mindful. She is in the moment, and she is just totally there. She's talking about the sky and the sea and the colors, whereas I'm Miss Planner. Like, I'm already in Cairns. I'm thinking about the fin. I'm planning, and what do we need to do? What do we need to sort out?
Wow.
So, when we did the team testing, before this was during selection of the team, I remember when I'd met Nat, I was like, oh God, no, we are poles apart. There's just no way, because I was trying to see it through, I was only seeing it through my own lens of who I was getting a rapport with. But I brought her on to the team testing weekend, which was, I'd gone to some ex-military guys, and I said, look, we need to be tested. I need to see what we're like when we're cold, wet, hungry, really sore, in pain. You need to physically push us. You need to mentally push us.
Wow.
And so we did like a 72-hour sleep depot, army type thing, across in the Brecons in Wales. And on reflection now, like, and I was on reflection, that was great fun, and obviously hated it during it. And I remember, like, during it, sort of Nat in particular is a personality that stood miles out, because when she came onto it, I was thinking, oh, she can come along, but I don't think I'm going to be selecting her. And then Nat was the one that, she might not have been the fittest, but even when she was struggling and she was in pain, she had a sense of humor, and
Wow.
when I was starting to struggle, she made me laugh, and I was like, oh my God, there's not many people
That
that
can
can do
do
that when
that.
I'm in that space.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this isn't just about me, but for the comfort of the team. Like, we need that, because otherwise this is good. I will make this too serious. I will, when it gets into it, it will be too boring and serious. I need a sense of humor in this
Yeah.
boat, and she's got it in abundance. And she kept
Wow.
us in the moment as
Yeah.
well. Like, I needed that mindfulness when we were out at
Yes.
sea, because otherwise I wouldn't have remembered half the things that went on, and I wouldn't have recognized it, seen it. I would have
Isn't
been
that
living
amazing?
on
So,
land.
like, looking at the strengths and differences can actually end up being the thing that holds you together rather than pulls you apart. And
100%. Yeah.
I just think this space, I have to connect you with Paul Taylor. He will love you. He's a
Uh,
resilience expert that I was mentioning before. And yeah,
yeah.
I think when you have characters, and I've started to do this, and just for myself, even now, I have these different characters. There's the good me and there's the bad me. And the good me is like Wonder Woman. She can do anything and she's amazing. And she has all these character traits that, I aspire to and want to have. And that's that side of me. And then the other side's a real bitch. She's a horrible, negative, cynical, selfish person. And those are both me, and
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
put this on, Paul talks about doing like cartoon characters and putting speech bubbles on them and actually giving them life, and because it puts you outside of these characters that are fighting in your head, and you're
Yeah.
trying to be that good one you want to be, but when you're hungry and cold and freezing and you haven't slept in 3 days and you're struggling somewhere and God knows where, and you just want to go home and cry and hide under the covers and get mummy to give you a chicken soup, you it puts it outside of you and it helps you see what
Yeah.
you're doing. And even in
Yeah.
daily things like I've been rehabilitating my mum now for 5 years, 7 days a week. And at the beginning, first 3 years, it was like 8 hours a day, so it was just it was full on, and then even longer than that in the first year. And I catch myself sometimes being so short and irritable because I'm like trying to multitask. I'm trying to run my businesses, and she's waiting for me, and you just find yourself snapping at
Yeah.
somebody when you just feel like that asshole Lisa is present, and you're just like
Yeah.
listening to yourself going, how the hell do I get a grip on this one? And we're all human and we're all working on this. And, I go to my
Absolutely.
mummy and I put her in bed at night time and I cuddle into her and I say, I'm sorry for being a bitch today, Ma. And I'm sorry for snapping at you. And she's so lovely. She's like, oh, it's all right, darling,
Oh, bless her.
But we have moments where we're just not nice, and when you're in these extreme circumstances, they're the ones that come out. And this is a part of the dynamic thing that I find really, really fascinating, and that whole resilience and teamwork, and how do you bring that all together. We're going to have to wrap up this one because I've really enjoyed talking to you, Laura, but I really would like to have you on a couple of times, because I think there's much more to this actual story, because we haven't even got to talking about, well, what was it actually like to row, and how did you what did you actually have to do on a daily basis, and how do you plan for such a thing, and how do you have such a big project and deal with it. And so I'm really glad that we've made this connection, and I'm very, very keen to have you on the show again. Because we've really just been part one, I think.
Oh, bless you. No, I'll be honoured to come back on. There's so much I think we connect with and we can talk about for sure, especially in that headspace, how we can be holistic, and what we've both learned from the experiences that we faced and continue to learn, I think is always an exciting journey.
Yeah.
So I'd be honoured to come back on.
That would be fantastic, because I think also the work that you've done with Paralympians and people that are working with disabilities and trauma, we haven't even unpacked that either, because I think that we can learn a heck of a lot from people that have gone through all these dramas and so on. I mean, I learn every day from mum. Like, her mindset is just like incredibly strong, resilient, and so I'd like to unpack some of that stuff as well. So Laura, thank you very much for your time today. I think you're a rock star. Where can people find you, and where can they get involved in what you're doing, and do your whatever you've got available, because you've got some really good lessons to share with people. So tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, I mean, on usual social media, sort of the Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn, just at Laura Penhaul, and that's sort of, Penhaul is my surname. So yeah, reach out to that. We've also got our endurance book, so where we've sort of added science behind kind of some of the endurance sort of focus, is on GCN, which is a Global Cycling Network website, or our podcast is Endurance as well, which is with Mark Beaumont, which I co-author on. So
yes, so I'm very keen to meet and hopefully get on the show as well, Mark Beaumont.
Definitely.
Hook me up there.
And keen to get you on that as well, because I think you've got a lot to add,
I'd love to
with all your experiences, for sure.
That would be an absolute honor. Laura, you're one hell of a strong woman. I can't wait to see where you go in the future, and what what you take on. God forbid, it's probably going to be big. And thank you for sharing. I think you have such great knowledge to share with people, and you have a duty to get that information out there, because this is the sort of stuff that helps people. So thank you very much for your time today, Laura.